It's despite AA, not because of AA or any 12-step, that I finally found recovery, I guess ironically. But I was angry for a while. I felt I'd been conned. I've been able to heal a lot from that. I was like so misled by so many people in the rooms. I had no physical allergy. It crushed the threefold allergy. I was afraid of my own thinking, which I found out was basically what they made me believe. Like I had to run everything by a sponsor. And I also had that combined with not knowing I was autistic until I was like 31. I wasn't restless, irritable, or discontent without it. I knew that from that point forward that this wasn't actually real, and that was hard to reconcile with. You can choose your own God is because the most important thing is that ego death, or the crux of the whole thing, is designed to like position you into this humble space to heal you from your narcissistic personality disorder, I guess. But for the rest of us who don't have that problem going in and not going to help, I have my suspicions that they could be alive if they didn't go to 12-step. I know that sounds crazy to somebody who might be watching this, because a lot of people think that 12-step just saves everybody that goes, but as someone who went for as long as I did, I know that's not the case. And that's really hard for some diehard 12-steppers to reconcile with. I was all in. I was immersed and I was sold and I believed all of it. So cool to have a book on how to fix stuff, how to fix it, whatever this is. You know, I knew since I was a kid that there was something off about me, but it just didn't work out for me. And it slowly ate away at my self-esteem, to myself sometimes. Like, what am I leaving out? You know, what if I am like constitutionally incapable of honesty? This stuff landed me in inpatient while I was going to 12-step. It wasn't because I left 12-step that I was in an institution. It was because I was going. In the end, I just realized that like none of it's real, and it's safer for me to just stay away from anything that tries to put me on a path of thinking along those lines. It's a one-size-fits-all, prescription for substance use disorder, and it's tragic. It's so dishonest and so misleading and misrepresentative to give people hope that they have this solution, when in most cases it's not going to work for you. And then when it doesn't work for you, it will double down and blame you for that. And I feel like 12-step took so many years of my life away that could have been like it is now, because I'm thriving so much more on methadone than I did trying to use 12-step as my recovery model, as like the foundation of it. It was awful. Harm reduction has changed my life.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Kirsten Johnson podcast. I am super excited to be here today with Kylee, who is somebody that I know from the Facebook comment section over on my Facebook page, which is, I'd say, liberating and a hot mess all at the same time. I'll link my Facebook below if you want to join us there, join me there, anybody there, the conversation there. I specifically invited you on because you have so many really insightful and like deeply, in my view, you deeply understand the psychological trap of Alcoholics Anonymous, and the way out is what it appears from the way that I've seen you describe it, talk about it. And I just really appreciate your perspective on this. And I thought it would be very cool to have you on and just hear some of your story about leaving AA, what that was like, and what the journey out of the ideology or deprogramming from it has been.
Wow. Thank you so much. Yes, I know I'm like all up in your comments sometimes. I don't know how long ago I found your content. There's a few people that I follow. You and Tara, Burn the Stigma, and then of course Macaulay, Sexton Space. Yeah, he's got some great content too. Thank you so much. I'm so honored. I'm such a fan. It has been a really good part of my deprogramming, like to engage in this content that all of you guys make, and like talking to some of the other people has been really helpful. Like, I mean, of course, like we started off, or at least I know I was pretty young when I started going to AA. So like I learned there first, but the power of relating to other people, relating to other people is super powerful, regardless of what the context is. So like finding like-minded people to talk to, which I have, like I found friends through the comment sections of your guys' content, and I've had some trolls. It's that I've like, people that I've seen attacking you or attacking Tara. Like I think I like to jump in sometimes and help you guys out. And that's gone a lot of different ways, and that's been really interesting. But regardless, like I think it's given me a space to be able to talk about this thing specifically, like 12-step, like leaving it and like the different, the process that encompasses. Like it's like pretty complex. Like I really hate when people say the comment that you hear over and over, like you don't have to go if you don't want to go.
The door's open. Just don't go.
Yeah. And I know that like on the surface it really does seem like it's that easy, but like like I've said so many times to people that like say these things, like the ones of us, and I'm just making an educated guess here, but like the people that I've seen, including myself, that feel like it was hard to leave AA are the ones that were really invested for years and years. I was in a vulnerable place when I joined. I was very young, and I listened to all of the suggestions. I really wanted to be a good AA. I wanted it to work. I wanted, I didn't want to miss out on the promises and the magic and all the things that, if you just do the work, then you get this life, right? So I really wanted it. I did, to my knowledge, everything that I was supposed to do. And I don't know. I there was a lot of struggle there, but in the end, it was hard to leave because of like the stuff I know that you've said so many times. Like, we think we're gonna die if we leave. There's that like there was the part of myself where I thought I'm on the wrong path. Like if I stop going to meetings, how long is it gonna take before I start to go downhill? At what point is my, and there's all the abstract stuff that like really drives me crazy. And I'm so glad that I'm past this stuff now. Like I don't have to think about this stuff anymore. But it was, I've heard you guys use the term mental gymnastics, and that's perfectly, that's put so perfectly, because it really does feel like that. Like, like at what point is my emotional sobriety being compromised? At what point am I resting on my laurels? At what point am I putting something else before my sobriety? At what point am I, having a fear that is gone from like normal to like running riot? Like at what point is all these abstract things that are like totally unmeasurable? Like I don't, like it was just really hard to live like life like that. But anyway, I think you usually start these things out with the question, how how long have you been in or when did you get to AA and how long and all that? So,
how long, just so we have context of
sure.
A timeline for, maybe that's just my head, the way that I work with numbers. When I was deep studying math all the time, I literally would dream in numbers. So they orient my mind. So I like to start off with like, when I was getting a master's in statistics, I was doing so much math work that I would dream in like number. Anyway, there's my little geek aside. So
no, that's amazing.
For me, it orients me to know, like, about how long were you in and about how long ago did you leave, or was it not that clear and you went in and out for a long time or whatever, because that gives me a framework. If you were there for 6 months or 60 years, it gives me a different framework. And I think it's helpful in general. People want to know, just have an idea of the timeline. But it's really that, now that we're saying this and I'm kind of unpacking it in the moment with you, it's the time isn't really what's significant. It's the level of indoctrination.
I started AA on my own. Like I went to AA, I think a couple AA meetings with my stepdad, like through my teens, just as a tag along, probably as a punishment for who knows what, as like warning me, if you do this again, you'll end up here. Probably, I don't know. But I got 12-stepped by a new friend at the time. We stayed friends for a while after that, but in January of 2008, and I stayed in AA. I went in and out, but I like, as far as like, I would relapse and then start over, get a white chip. But I stayed in AA until 2021. So I'm really bad at math. I have a pretty severe math like learning disability. So
sure, you got there a year before me and left a year after me. So we were there about the same amount of time.
You were probably there for more. I mean, I don't know what there, really means. I would leave sometimes for a month, sometimes for a couple days. I think I stayed out for a year once in there somewhere. But I was always in AA. Like, I wanted to leave a few times, probably more than a few times. But, I had the fear. Like, I definitely knew that I had what I now know as substance use disorder or substance use disorders. I have an opioid use disorder and probably an alcohol use disorder. Both of those are in remission now. I feel great about that. It's despite AA, not because of AA or any 12-step, that I finally found recovery, I guess ironically. But it doesn't feel ironic to me anymore now that, so basically what happened was somewhere in, I think in 2018, I had a friend pass away again, but she was like one of my closest run-in buddies in AA, and we grew up in AA together. I was 24 when I started. I don't know if I said that yet. And she was the same age as me, and she ended up dying. She overdosed, and so I was pretty upset with her loss, and I wanted to do, and I was also had it up to here with like the rooms, but I still didn't really know what else to do, where else to go. It was just a tough spot to be in. But I started as like a way of service work. I started volunteering at a syringe service program in honor of my friend who passed away. And this was the best move that I think I ever made. And that was the beginning of my deprogramming journey, which was great because all the other times that I left AA before or tried to leave, whether it was like a week, a month, or whatever, I would always end up running back, whether or not I even picked up like or used or anything, because I was afraid to be out on my own, because ultimately I couldn't think for myself. I was afraid of my own thinking, which I found out was basically what they made me believe. Like I had to run everything by a sponsor. And I also had that combined with not knowing I was autistic until I was like 31. So that was a big factor, like a big light that went off. I don't know if you can relate to this part, but like when I found out about the autism, it was like being in the movie, you know, the one where like the guy finds out that he was the dead one the whole time. Do you know what movie I'm talking about?
Sixth Sense?
Yes. He's been dead this whole time and he didn't know he was all okay. And like that was the big twist. And so I felt like me finding out that I was autistic was like, it felt something like I imagined that guy felt in that movie. Like, oh my God. That was like so insightful about a lot of things. Like, I think I watched a video where you were describing how and this was very healing for me from you specifically, so I thank you for making this content so much. But you were describing how a lot of your autistic traits would end up, I don't know if they wound up on your fourth step somehow, but they were like stuff that you ended up believing at one point in AA that they were character defects that you tried to get rid of, instead of, you know, understand clinically through the correct diagnosis, which is like the difference in what your life is like when you everything, right?
It's gonna make me cry. Yeah, it's everything.
I want to like talk about something that was the first big crack in this whole thing for me was, and it's so weird because it wasn't even halfway through the journey, but it was like this thing that happened. I was maybe about 2 or 3 years in to AA, and at this point that's how much time I had, or you know, whatever. I hadn't went back out yet. And I was like, it was summertime, I wanted to start getting healthier, you know, stop eating junk food, whatever. You know, I had some girlfriends, we would go jogging, and I picked up the habit of drinking kombucha. So I started buying these kombuchas. It was that brand that makes like Synergy. I don't know if you drink these kombuchas, but so I drank these. And interestingly, I drink them extremely moderately. Sometimes I would drink half of one. Sometimes I would forget I had them in my fridge. Sometimes I would drink one. I never did drink more than one a day. You know, I was definitely consuming this drink without a substance use disordered relationship to it, right? I didn't, but of course I would, you know, it's kombucha. It's just like any other drink, non-alcoholic. Well, another thing I want to add till I get to that twist, is that like sometimes I would drink like a half of one of these drinks and I would sit on my porch and I would watch the sunset and I would feel like, wow, this is what it feels like to be healthy. This is nice, you know, like having a healthy drink, and I had a runner's high, baby, is what I thought, or you know. So, but it turned out I went to go to the grocery store to get these kombucha drinks, restock or whatever, and they were gone, and they had been pulled from the shelf. There was a recall on this specific brand at my specific store, and a bunch of them actually in the whole state, because they were fermenting to the alcohol content of a little more than a Budweiser. And I was drinking alcohol. This went on, I mean, I was doing this for like months. So that blew my mind. Like, I didn't know that it was alcohol. I mean, kombucha tastes kind of like it. I mean, it could have easily hit in there if you've ever had it before. So
I got buzzed off of something like that by accident. I drank, it was in Bali. I was on antibiotics, and each day I was getting like this really big bottle of coconut kefir, which is like kombucha. It's fermented.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
drank one every day. And on the 5th day, I went, and the 5th day, it was like a super fermented batch. I drank half of the bottle. And all of a sudden, I was buzzed. I wanted to go outside and dance and jump in the pool and I was like, what? I'm like, am I buzzed? What the hell? Am I getting drunk? And so, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I called it my free lapse. I didn't drink the rest of it because I was clearly getting buzzed. I was like, okay, that was my free lapse. I think I was like 6 years sober. I went to my AA meeting the next day and shared about it. I was like, I got to be honest, you know?
Yeah.
So what happened?
Well, I mean, I kind of felt stupid at first because of not recognizing the feeling as being like, I just did not expect it. But like the thing that like blew my mind the most about it was how I consumed it so normally, because I didn't believe that it was alcohol or know that it was, but it definitely was. And that's why I felt so healthy, because I had like, drinking a half a beer is basically what that, without having any tolerance, because I had been for years abstinent before that. So it crushed the threefold allergy. Like, I had no physical allergy happened with me over and over, like there was no obsession to like always get kombucha, like I wasn't like, I could be out of it and not care. Like, it wasn't something, it was just like having milk or having, any normal grocery. And what's the other part? The spiritual, like, I wasn't restless, irritable, or discontent without it. I knew that from that point forward that this wasn't actually real. And that was hard to reconcile with. But I still struggled after that when it came to a substance that I knew had a mind-altering component to it. I didn't have a complete... At first I got excited, like, oh, I can moderate, like across the board. But that didn't turn out to be the case right away. There was so many layers of what Alcoholics Anonymous, and I also attended NA, and I even went through, I had some sponsees that I got along the way that were also in Overeaters Anonymous, and I went to some meetings with them to those. I explored Emotions Anonymous just because why not? I went to one of those. That was so strange. But anyway, out of all the 12-step, I was so indoctrinated into what I thought addiction was. I didn't know the term substance use disorder. I didn't know anything outside of this, but then I felt like I was some kind of veteran in this field. That feeling after years and years of like meeting after meeting, like you just, I don't know why, but I mean, of course I know why, but like I felt like I knew about this thing, and I had this like insider's perspective, and my lived experience was something more meaningful than it was. I started volunteering at this syringe service program. It was very humbling. My last meeting was in 2021, but I started volunteering as early as like 2018. I'm now actually the president of the directors board of that syringe service program. I've been there since 2018. I started getting broadening my education through learning about harm reduction and learning about other resources. We have nurses and we have a medical director and people that work in the field that aren't coming in with a perspective of that of 12-step. So that was really healthy for me and very eye-opening. I learned that my lived experience, although that is valuable, that is anecdotal, and it does not give me, like, entitle me to to advise, especially unsolicited, but advise anybody on what to do with their substance use or about their substance use, because we all have a very unique reason why our issues have manifested.
So you started working, volunteering, and you had the kombucha experience, and the ideology the brainwashing is starting to crack. And that's how I think about it. I don't want to say you were brainwashed. I was. But the cracks were happening in the ideology. What's the next like awakening, or the next thing that happened that moved you further from being a fully in AA or a 12-step?
Oh man. So there were so many instances. I wish that I could remember every single one. Like I really did try to sit down last night and try to make a timeline, and like even just to remember like myself. Like a lot of that stuff I've tried to block out, because there's some pretty painful times during that splitting. It was really hard because I had relationships that were based on that were, we met each other in the rooms, and the belief that we shared, that was like bonding us a lot more than I realized. And when I started to ask the certain types of questions, or reject certain ideas about the 12 steps, like the program itself, not just the people, but like I started like I think a lot of people do, where the program was still sacred. It was the people that were fucking it up, like it was always, like some bad actors, but that got to be, too much, to the point where I had to admit, like, it can't be everyone. And like, you can't just blame people for a program that's made for people not working. Like, if you're going to make a program for people, then I think that you should take into account the way that people are and behave and function and what drives them. And instead of setting some type of standard, and then when they don't make it, like it's their fault for all these, abstract reasons that aren't measurable or provable. It's like, I know that you know what I mean. But there were so many things that led to my leaving AA in the end. So like, I used to play music professionally, and I had a record deal, and with this deal, I was given a little bit of money in advance to record some music and make a record. Like, with the permission of my colleagues and bandmates, I took a little bit of that money and pursued. I lived in Georgia at the time, and I didn't have health insurance, so I tried to use that money to pursue some behavioral health resources, because I was working the program, I was sober, I was abstinent, I was doing everything that I could, but I would watch, I was watching everybody that came in get these lives, and I couldn't keep a job, I couldn't keep, I was homeless chronically. A lot of the basic life problems that a lot of people struggle with substance use when they come in, like for me, those didn't change ever. It's really frustrating. So I thought, there's some outside issues happening, or something. So I wanted to explore that. At one point, I had a psychiatrist say that they thought I might have attention deficit disorder and recommended Adderall. My sponsor told me not to take it. I took it anyway because I wanted, to not be homeless and to be able to keep a job.
Yeah.
The autism eventually comes into play, but I didn't know about that yet. And I was taking the Adderall as I was supposed to for the first month or so, but I knew that it wasn't it. So I started intentionally it was almost like the fuck it. I got the fuck it's, a case of the fuck it's. And I knew that if I relapsed, then that would get attention somehow. I needed help. So I did it. I overused my prescription for 2 weeks maybe. And then a few days into doing that, I realized, oh my God, I just threw away all my time. And I felt humiliated and confused. And I ended up getting flown out to a rehab in Los Angeles through this company called Musicares. It's like a insurance for professional musicians in crisis. And I didn't have health insurance, and the money that I had put aside to try to get help just ended up giving me Adderall in the end that didn't work. So I was at the end of my rope there, and I went to all the way out. I flew from Georgia all the way out to Los Angeles to go to some special rehab, and in the end they just ended up putting us on a bus and taking us to AA meetings. And of
course.
I had at that point been going for years, and I only used for a couple weeks, and I felt like I knew I did it on purpose to I thought this is what I got to do, and it worked. I got the attention I needed. I got flown out to a place where there was a doctor there, and so I could continue to try to get this thing figured out. I feel like this is a long story.
Yeah.
I was struggling with the way that they made me feel in that facility was terrible. I felt humiliated the whole time. And I was like, is this what we do to newcomers? And people would tell me it's my ego, and and that it was just hard because I knew I was really just there to try to talk to a doctor about some stuff, and I had to do this song and dance of AA 12-step, and just kind of I felt just take it. I don't know how to explain it, but it was very painful to be talked to on a daily basis for that whole duration of the 90 days. I was useless. I had nothing to offer. I needed to sit down and shut up. I didn't understand. I clearly didn't understand the steps, or I must have lied, or I must have not done it right, because anyone who does the steps vigorously, thoroughly, and honestly is not going to use again, right? But that's not true.
Yeah.
But I think I know why now, which is something it took me a while to, and I don't know if I'm right, but I have some suspicions of why it wasn't working. So I started going to this IOP. I met a guy. I met at a meeting, and I recommended he go to the IOP. We were at a harm reduction meeting, not an AA meeting. I was going to those. I was branching out at this point. And he ended up being amazing. He was so smart, and he was beautiful, and but he had a week in sober at this point, and that was a red flag, right? We're not supposed to do that. We're not supposed to, it doesn't say in the book specifically anything about it, but there's a huge thing in the culture of give them at least a year, And I was like legitimately shaking the first time we held hands, because I thought, this is like, I could just see my life flashing before my eyes because of this decision to date this guy. But I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, we're married now, and we've been together for 6 years, and I am so in love with my husband, and we're both in recovery, and we're fine, and it worked out fine. And I'm so glad that I didn't follow that suggestion. I would have lost out on the love of my life, you know. And once we started dating, he was never really sold on the program. He was, I think, always more of a harm reductionist already. I was still learning about what that was. But so that worked out great for us. But it's taken a long time, like through working with people in the syringe service program that we have built. We're here where I live. We've branched out into a recovery community organization, which is a space that hosts what it sounds like, a recovery community. That abstinence is not necessary for recovery. And learning that was like, like that was cool to learn that.
Yeah. In the comments that I've read, some of the comments I've read of yours on like my Facebook posts, you've demonstrated a very, what I would call, deep understanding of the psychological manipulation tactics inside Alcoholics Anonymous and 12-step ideology, as far as why, I think one of the comments I'm specifically referring to, you were explaining likely why some of the AA members in my comments are a bit unhinged, go to the ad hominems and insult. And you were talking about this is their identity. It feels like a death. And so could you speak a little bit about what you've noticed about what those who are fully immersed, or the psychological tactics, or some of your journey out to be able to see it? Because to me, you have a very deep understanding of psychologically what happens. So if you could speak to some of what you've learned.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. That's very flattering, and that means a lot coming from you, especially because I admire you so much for what you're doing. I believe that it is an identity after a point, because of the vulnerable space that somebody is typically in, and I know that I was in when we start a journey like the 12 steps. And especially for me too, because I was only 24 and I was autistic with a developmental disorder, so I think I was probably like emotionally, intellectually less mature, or like even more vulnerable, maybe. I mean, I think I was. I know that I was. I was very impressionable. I didn't know it at the time, but I still am. And I'm terrified of being conned, terrified of being manipulated. There's like all these parts of recovery culture, whether it's in the book specifically or it's like something in the rooms, there's like all these pieces to this puzzle that kind of make this typical situation manifest, where that identity aspect is so prevalent. You have people, places, and things you have to change. Well, what do I do? I get rid of the people, places, and things and replace them with the ones in 12-step. You have a lot of people find work through their connections in that space as well. You end up having your social life built through those networks, and all that's fine until, or if you want to leave, then it gets really complicated. But like, and not only is it like those aspects of your life become so tied to your membership. But like, you know, the repetition of reading how it works in every meeting and going, you know, a lot of us, you know, would go 3 to 5 meetings a week. I think that was pretty standard for what we thought of as a good AA in my home group. When I went, I was all in. I know I've heard you say in a lot of your videos, like I was the same as you, Kirsten. I was immersed and I was sold and I believed all of it, and I wanted it. I wanted it to be true, I think, so bad, because it was like so cool to have a book on how to fix stuff, how to fix it, whatever this is. You know, I knew since I was a kid that there was something off about me. So, you know, when my friend suggested I go to these meetings so that I could stay in our band, I was like, I was sure I was willing to do it, you know, so I could stay in the band. But then I started listening to what they had to offer, and it sounded like, oh my God, what if this is like what it was the whole time? And if I just do these simple things, which I'm totally willing to do, of course, why wouldn't I be? Then I can make this, I can have this daily reprieve of this. And I was okay. That sounded like a good deal. You know, I was totally okay with that. But it just didn't work out for me. And it slowly ate away at my self-esteem. You know, chapter 5, the whole, I'm trying to remember. I used to have a lot of this stuff memorized, but I don't anymore. It's like, and I'm glad for that actually. But, you know, it says in chapter 5 exactly what is wrong with us, or alcoholics. And, you know, I love that it's
self-centered. That's the root of our problem. Self-will run riot. It's anti-self. And I know as like me, as like an undiagnosed neurodivergent, the last thing that I needed with all the trauma that a lot of us have. I mean, 9 out of 10 of us autistic girls are sexually abused by the time we're 18. So by the time I picked up alcohol, I was already dysregulated nervous system, all this trauma. I'm different. And then, so yeah, when we get there and we're told that we're anti-self and the self is the disease and you can't trust your thinking and your will needs to be turned over. Get rid of your will and your thoughts and your desires. It's all about God. I didn't need to abandon myself and betray myself. I had spent my entire life doing that. I actually needed to fill up with myself. I had already put everybody else's needs first. So what Bill Wilson may have needed for himself, and quite frankly, he was more of like, as far as I've heard, more of like a predator. I was more of like a prey. I needed the opposite program from what Bill needed. So maybe Bill did need to, you know, self-diminution. I needed self-raising. And I think a lot of that is because of the undiagnosed neurodivergence along with the unresolved trauma that came because of my social differences and everything else.
Exactly. And exactly. And you nailed it when you said that Bill was like, you know, I think he was ultimately projecting onto everyone else with what he struggled with. And it just so happened that, you know, there were some people around him that maybe identified with it as well. I'm not sure. I wasn't there. But what I think, you know, like going back to what I am suspicious now, more the reason of why it didn't work for me and why it doesn't work for most people. And I say that confidently. Like, I think, you know, I'll go off to the side for a second. A lady just yesterday in our comments was like, what is your source for this? You know, because I do often say that most people don't succeed, you know, whatever that means is, you know, succeed in 12-step. And she's like, what's your source for this? And I'm like, well, World Services of AA is a good source because they will tell you themselves, that self-reporting, that it's like 37% of success rate. And I think it might go up to 60 on their self-reporting as for anybody past 5 years, but I don't buy that. But like that's at least still not that great. I think what is 60, like a D, and if we were grading a paper, it's like a D, and then like, 37 is an F, a fail. So anyway, but I got to reel myself back in. So, where were we? Sorry. The Bill Predator. By the way, I really love
psychological
the term
tactics. Oh. I didn't make it up. Somebody left in the comments Bill shit, and I borrowed that because it is so good. Somebody also left Bill Boozle in the comments. I love Bill Boozle. And then there was a Billoney, because I always would say it's AA's baloney, AA's baloney, it's baloney. So someone's like, it's Billoney. And I'm like, it doesn't sound as good as Bill shit, but it's so relevant too. There's a lot of Bill Boozle nails it. Like it's a whole Bill Boozle. Like it's just,
I love it.
It's not true. Why it fits so different. It fits so like it deep for me is because I believe that what I was relating to in the rooms was what other people were explaining as autism and ADHD, and they were calling all of that alcoholism. So I was relating to neurodivergence. So I think there's a lot of different things, and it might not just be autism, ADHD, other types of maybe different brains, if you will, or personality things or mental health things. And people are explaining all these things that they have going on and calling it all alcoholism. So we're all finding our story somewhere. But I think I was relating to the autistics and ADHDs who were also misdiagnosed through AAs, like handing down this wisdom, it's alcoholism, but it wasn't. What I was relating to was actually the neurodivergence. And so alcoholic thinking to me is obviously bullshit. No, that's not a thing. My drinking was problematic and I couldn't always control it, but that's separate from my thinking, my perception, my sensory experience, and how I was always, and that whole thing about I didn't get the rule book for life, the handbook for life. I'm like, yeah, that's because I'm like socially different, not because I'm not an alcoholic.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's crazy. I feel exactly the same. Like I found out after I started learning about autism that the word autism comes from the Latin word auto, meaning self, which can,
Yes.
so we can also think of it as selfism, but it doesn't mean it in in like the sense of selfish person. It's just a person that's sort of trapped in their own bubble, which I can relate to that. But it's like once I have awareness, once I found that out, that started making me realize how much of what I was dealing with was autism, and I was also calling it alcoholism or addiction. Then I did also have a substance use disorder with opioids, which every time, like my relationship with opioids was I would have a stent or like 6 months to a year where I would consume opiates, and then I would get to a point where it would be moving into what we call chaotic use. And I was always very uncomfortable with that. It's a really tough space to live in, and it wasn't sustainable for me. So I would have to find a way to stop doing that, and then I would use alcohol to wean myself off of it. And that's when I would be drinking excessively, and then I would go to AA, and then I'd have these cycles of in and out, in and out. But the opiates were very helpful for me insofar as like they would help with my sensory issues. Like I found that the stuff my dentist gave me was making it feel okay to be in Walmart or the mall, which was like, the mall is like hell on earth. But if I really needed to go to make my mom happy, or like I could mow my mother's yard for the first time in my life without it feeling like, I'm pushing this, like trudging through hell in this crazy landscape with this machine that's vibrating my brain while it's burning on fire. But I could take opiates, and they like turned that stuff down to a manageable degree, and I loved that. But like, that wasn't, that coping with it that way, it wasn't sustainable. Until I found methadone, which I have actually been on now for like 5.5 years, and I'm thriving, and it's like the best of both worlds, really. I'm not high, and my recovery is sustainable, and it does help with the sensory issues, and it's just like, that was what I wish I would have done the whole time. But because I was in 12-step, I never entertained MAT because it wasn't sober, right? So I feel like 12-step.
I'm so happy for you.
Thank you. I feel like 12-step took so many years of my life away that could have been like it is now, because I'm thriving so much more on methadone than I did trying to use 12-step as my recovery model, as like the foundation of it. It was awful. And why is because, I think ultimately I was angry for a while. I felt I'd been conned. I've been able to heal a lot from that, like in the last year. I think it's been a little easier to sit with. I do think that it is a program for some people, for sure, that the 12 steps is designed to cause ego death, and that's what it's for. It is made, I think Bill assumed that the driver of addiction or substance use disorder is what he refers to as the spiritual malady, which is selfishness, self-seeking. These instincts run riot. He rephrased it in the 12 and 12, like 13 years after the big book, as instincts run riot, which is, all points to a narcissistic personality disorder, or like some kind of struggle along those lines, which, if that is something that someone struggles with, and if that's the case, and you happen to develop a substance use disorder, and these are co-occurring, then the 12-step program might be a really good thing for you to try. I think that there was a point in my life where I didn't think I would recommend it for anyone, because I was so mad, and I was so disgusted by it. I felt, but I do think it has its place. I think it should be systemically abolished for sure. But I do think that that's, about all that it's for, is for someone in that position. But, unfortunately, not everybody develops a substance use disorder because they are struggling with these specific issues. Like, you can still be a spiritually fit, humble person that's very conscientious and giving and loving while you're in chaotic use. And I think that it's hard for some people to believe that, but I know that it's true. I'm still, I'm not blown away by this information anymore, but the path to finding that truth out was really eye-opening, and really a lot, because I spent so many years like believing everything that we are taught in 12-step to be as true as, like, the laws of physics or something. It's like it's just like
yeah.
It turns
You're
my
a
world
powerless
upside
pickle.
down. And like the kombucha thing, I'm glad that happened to me, because nobody, if nobody believes the story, that's fine. I know that I do not have an allergy some people I think would say, well, it's because you're not a real alcoholic or a real addict. And it's like, okay, like there's a cop out for everything in this program. It's baked in, all these cop outs. And I'm like, oh, I can't. It's like after a point, it's just so exhausting. Like we have these meetings in the clinic that I go to where we're kind of like mandated to go to the meetings, like for our counseling hours to stay on the medication. It's like part of the opioid treatment programs, like state law. So anyway, they're not 12-step meetings, so it's okay. And I go to access my medicine. But there are some people that go and they treat it like a 12-step meeting. I can't remember what I contributed to the meeting, something about my experience with 12-step along the lines of like we're talking, and this guy chimes in with like he wanted to offer this idea that like maybe I didn't surrender. I like, I don't know, like I was just like, you think that after all those years I never thought of that? Like I never, like you've got to be kidding me. Like it is so condescending sometimes. It's like, like this stuff used to really fuck with my head, like because I thought I internalized that stuff onto myself, like when in the beginning when it wasn't working, like, and I was still using despite having gone through the steps like probably a dozen times and taken sponsees through. I did H&I work as well, as I've heard you say you had. I've gone to meetings all over the country. I went to meetings every time I would go on tour. I've toured Europe. I went to meetings out there, different countries. It's like astounding how people will just assume like that you didn't do, you weren't honest enough. And I thought to myself sometimes, like, what am I leaving out? Like what if I am like constitutionally incapable of honesty, and like, this stuff like, landed me in inpatient before while I was going to 12-step. Like it wasn't because I left 12-step that I was in an institution. It was because I was going. In retrospect, I look back at that as like when I was having a hard time, sometimes it would get worse because, ultimately I'm autistic and I, didn't have anything left to do but more service work. I was taught like even if you don't want to do it, you should do it. Almost to where like if you don't want to do something, that means that's the thing you should do, kind of thing. Like, oh, the way that we thought was awful. And so I signed myself up for all these things because it was the last thing in the world I wanted to do. And that was like pushing me into this space of burnout that I actually had psychosis at one point. And it never happened again. It was this isolated incident. I think it's because I stayed up for too long without sleep and I had like some audio hallucinations. But I was completely abstinent. I was having this really hard time because I thought that God had abandoned me, or that God, I knew that I was doing the work. And I knew that I was praying, and that I thought, like, that if God is real and all this is real, like, in the end I just realized that like none of it's real, and it's safer for me to just stay away from anything that tries to put me on a path of thinking along those lines. The word spiritual and the word religious are synonyms for each other. They're actually literally not meaningfully different. I know that people associate like religions with like these specific things, and spirituality with this like other thing, like this individual, like new agey, whatever that means to a person, like in an individual self-defining way. What I'm getting at is that I really appreciated it when you pointed out that 12-step is its own religion, and I completely agree. Of course, it is based on the Oxford groups, Christian inspired or whatever, but it hadn't occurred to me that it's its own religion, and it absolutely is. It absolutely is its own religion. It was like the little bow on this little box of like my new perspective on what 12-step is. I loved that. Oh, the little bow that you gave me there.
Yeah, people were always saying to me things like, AA, if AA is a religion, what religion is it? I'm like, it's AA religion. Like, what do you mean? It's like, that's like saying what religion is Christianity? What religion is like Muslim or whatever? I'm like, it's Christianity.
Yes.
It's AA. It's Alcoholics Anonymous. They're like, it's not a religion. You could choose any God. I'm like, no, inside AA religion, you can choose any God. That is the religion. And it could even be a freaking doorknob. That's the religion, is you get to pick your own God. Just like, in Bali, it's Hindu. And so they have thousands of gods, right? And in AA, you can choose your own God. It's choose your own adventure.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not lost on me that the reason why you can choose your own God is because the most important thing is that ego death, right? So like, it doesn't matter what your God is or who your God is, as long as you know that you're not it. And like, that's the whole, the crux of the whole thing is designed to like position you into this humble space to heal you from your narcissistic personality disorder, I guess. And it will work great for that. It makes sense that it would. But for the rest of us who don't have that problem going in and didn't develop substance use disorder because of that, like, it's not going to help. It's not doing anything. It's just kind of like putting you in this space of it can be harmful. It's for me after a point, very harmful, because a lot of parts of me weren't getting better, and my prescription of all these suggestions that I took, and that thing where they say take what you want and leave the rest. I fucking hate that, because how am I supposed to know what to leave and what to take if I can't trust my own thinking? I could never tell, like, what I was supposed to, how was I supposed to know if I was so chronically rendered codependent on sponsors, my sponsor, and all this, like, and I know that, like, after a point we're supposed to be restored to where we're not so vulnerable, like the newcomer position. And maybe it's because I didn't go in with the issues that some people had that were getting healed through the process of working the steps. And it sucks because I wanted it so bad too. And I did the fake it till you make it part, and I would act as if, like I wrote that on my mirror, it's hard. I feel like I'm like getting so lost because this subject, like, so many things come at my brain at the same time, because I don't really get to sit down with somebody and talk about this specifically, because in the place that I work, like, we technically have to, well, we don't have to, like, I mean, I'm the president, I guess, but like we support all paths. But it is personally hard for me to support all paths, because this particular path is not supportive of any other path. I mean, some people in the rooms might be, but and the literature does say we don't have a monopoly on recovery, but tell that to the rest of the book. Like, it does.
Exactly, except for that they do, and they spend a lot of effort and time to get the monopoly.
In waking life, they literally do have a monopoly on recovery in our culture, in American culture, and a lot of other countries as well. I mean, not just AA as like a concept or whatever is a household known thing, but like unfortunately, a lot of the stigmas about people who use drugs and people who use substances or drink, like a lot of the really harmful stigmas that people have, that think, the beliefs that people have about those people that are harmful are perpetuated. They're created in those rooms and perpetuated in the rooms. And that's something that organizations like mine are fighting to eliminate and are fighting against. And this is really hard. It's really hard work. And I've had to start with myself. And that was a big part of my deprogramming, is like the internalized stigma, the stigma that I learned in the rooms, about, for example, the root of our troubles, selfishness, self-seeking, basically, I'm a piece of shit. So that's a problem that I have, and I have to, fix all of that. And like, it just kind of does a lot of damage to yourself. And I projected that onto myself, which was really unnecessary. And that's something that I've had to grieve over, was, the time spent where I actually believed that. I actually believed that I was selfish and self-seeking. And despite my best efforts to always be honest, I always had this weird sneaking suspicion that there was something that I was holding on to that was so dark and bad and disturbing that I was hiding it from myself. And that's why I wasn't getting well. And I had to know what I had to do to get that out, but that I just didn't know. I was coming up with these crazy ideas, because whatever it was, it had to line up with the 12-step rhetoric. I worked on that forever to try to figure out, this was my path to wellness, because clearly I had substance use disorder, and nothing was going to get better until this got better first. That's why I was so misled by so many people in the rooms. I did have some solid friends that I met there. Most of them don't go anymore. Some of them aren't alive anymore. I have my suspicions that they could be alive if they didn't go to 12-step. I know that sounds crazy to somebody who might be watching this, because a lot of people think that a 12-step just saves everybody that goes, but as someone who went for as long as I did, I know that's not the case. And that's really hard for some diehard 12-steppers to reconcile with. But the fact is that it's just, selfishness and self-seeking is not the root of everyone with substance use disorders troubles. That's a fact. And because of that, there is no thing in the 12 steps that's going to help a person that doesn't have that problem in the first place. It's a one-size-fits-all, prescription for substance use disorder, and it's tragic. It's so dishonest and so misleading and misrepresentative to give people hope that they have this solution, when in most cases it's not going to work for you. And then when it doesn't work for you, it will double down and blame you for that. And that's like crimes against humanity, kind of tragic, in my opinion. That's nuts. And I can't believe in 2026 we are still here using this, using the 12 steps as the main resource for substance use disorder. I'm really happy to see it's changing. Harm reduction is growing. That's so wonderful. How do you feel about harm reduction, Kirsten?
I wish I had known about it. And if I could go back, I would tell my 2009 self who got sober to do Sinclair method for my alcohol problem. It would have been a much easier step for me to take. And I actually, if I could really go back, I would tell my 1999 self. 1999 is when I first realized I had a problem with alcohol. And at that point, I would have been willing to take a pill that would help me drink less and have less consequences. Because that's what I wanted. So I wouldn't have had to get to the point where alcohol almost killed me, and I had to join a cult religion, AA. So if I could go back, I would have done harm reduction when I first recognized I had a problem. And I think it is a crime against humanity that that's not mainstream and known and what's offered to people, because all those next 10 years of suffering and alcohol getting worse and, didn't need to happen. And I did feel like I almost died, and that's why I got sober. I spent a lot of money on rehab, and then I spent a decade in AA. I wish I didn't, spend that money on rehab and a decade in AA. If I just took a pill that would make my brain naturally have less interest in alcohol because I'm blocking the opioid receptors and not getting the reward. And I would also tell myself to go to Smart Recovery because that existed back then for community and for coping skills. I needed coping skills. I'd also say go to therapy, get a good non-12-step therapist for trauma, and get your brain checked because you're neurodivergent, babe. And understanding, like my first year sober, 2009, I told my sponsor, I'm 100% sure I'm ADHD. She's like, no, everything is alcoholism. So I knew, and I didn't get diagnosed until 2024, but I knew 15 years earlier that I was ADHD, and I was convinced that I wasn't. So this whole don't get outside help thing, well, I didn't think that about outside help because I was told everything is alcoholism, and that's my individual experience. But I'm 100% all in on if it's not harm reduction, it's actually harmful. That the goal should be to reduce harm. To say you have to go abstinent is some purity culture backwards thing. It's a huge step that most of us don't want to take. So we have to lose so much before we're willing to give it up when it's not necessary. Yeah, I could go on and on about it, but I am team harm reduction 100%.
I love that. And I'd love to add to that too, that a lot of people pin harm reduction and abstinence against each other, or one versus the other, kind of bizarre. That sounds bizarre to me because it's like saying science versus physics or biology versus science. Abstinence is a type of harm reduction also. It cover, it's a wonderful one, actually. It's a great one. It's a great way to reduce your harm from getting into a car accident is by not driving a car, or not getting into a car, abstinence from that. I don't know if that works, but it's
yeah,
you could absolutely going to reduce harm from a substance if you don't use the substance at all. Harm reduction as a philosophy and as a way of looking at substance use disorder has changed my life. I was very weary for a little while to get too involved in outreach, because I didn't want the same thing to happen to me as I felt like it did in Alcoholics Anonymous, where I got excited and overzealous and was ready to be a spokesperson, not a spokesperson, but someone giving my testimony, because I was eager to help other people. And I felt so conned, and I was afraid, afraid that was going to happen with harm reduction, that I was going to wake up someday and feel oh shit, it happened again, I somehow got into another cult. Because I'm autistic and I know how I have this literal thinking, and some stuff does go over my head. I'm diagnosed level 1 in communication, but I did get diagnosed level 3 in restrictive and repetitive behaviors. I got tested by 2 different neuropsychologists because I wanted to be sure, and I definitely didn't feign my testing because I, wanted to know for real, this is for me, not for, I don't know. I just thought I'd add that because there's always people that think that you're not autistic because you don't look like whatever they think that you're supposed to, or sound like whatever.
It's been a delight to talk to you, and I really love your insights on everything. I love how you see the system, how you describe the system, and how you know AA inside out or 12-step inside out, and you understand the mechanisms of coercive control. And I just feel like it's been like, I just feel like this video is going to be such a gift for people, including some of our neurodivergent and autistic watchers. And there are many ADHDers, people who are autistic and ADHD, who also were in AA and were accidentally misdiagnosed. And so this is the message that like breaks my heart the most, is that like we get in there, we've already been to hell and back with our addiction. We've already struggled so much being in a world that wasn't really built for us. I've had my sensory challenges that I medicated them differently than you, but I've such empathy when you said like it just made the world a little bit softer, and then you could like breathe or whatever, or just turn it a little bit down. So I know exactly what you mean. That lawnmower story really hit me. So you've just said so many things today that is like medicine for my soul, even because it's like my story too. I just relate so much to what you're saying. And I love that you went so far deep and you've come so far out that you can really see it all and explain it in a way that to me is like brilliant. So I really just appreciate your thought process. I feel honored that you wanted to come and that you've been willing to share so honestly, and all your insights too. It's been really helpful.
Thank you. And I feel that way about all of your content. Like, it's been helping me so much to have someone that I feel I can relate to, and to be, it helps me to feel understood to watch your videos, especially with the autism component on top of deprogramming from 12-step. Like that's like kind of a pretty specific, unique circumstance that it's been, it's not something I expected to find, yet here I have this, creator that I've been following for a while. How long have you been making content?
The day that I started talking about AA online was April 6, 2025. It's been a little over a year that I specifically have been talking about AA, but I've been making content online since 2012. But I never talked about AA. I was too terrified. I never wanted to. I never wanted, because we knew what's going to happen, right?
Oh yeah.
And also that's the same. I was so scared to say it, and so I decided to rip the Band-Aid off. I was also terrified to say online that I'm autistic and I'm ADHD. So I did all three at once, the same video. I was like, I'm going to let it bear. And if everybody blocks me, deletes me, hates me, shuns me, unfriends me, let it be. But I'm sick of fucking hiding. I need to talk about this because I know there's other people like me, and we deserve better. We deserve the truth. Like, we deserve all of us, not just people like me. Like, stop lying to us. Like, fuck you. That's my point, is like, I look at 12-step as like a big gaslight, but it's an accidental one because the people doing it don't know that they're doing it. But there's nothing in the parking lot doing push-ups. Like, no, it's not. And I love how you even talked about like narcissism, and if you have a specific problems, then the ego deflation that Bill needed and Bill proposed and Bill wrote would be actually helpful for you. And I love that insight. That was like such a wisdom bomb for me.
It took me a while to get there to where, to admit that there is still a benefit there. The program does have some greatness to offer someone, and that's okay. It's just helped me to see like why the things are the way that they are. Like, I don't really understand how it got to be so big. Maybe because there just wasn't anything that anybody else made or bothered to make to compete with it. Like, I don't really know the answer to why it was able to be such this big conglomerate of a entity in our culture. As far as like why it works for anyone at all, and why most people it doesn't work for, like I do think that's why. It has some basic structure in there of like the golden rule kind of stuff, and there, there's some useful advice that I've picked up in the rooms that, like, who's to say I may have picked those things up in my life anyway. I am someone that has always wanted to be a good person, strive to be a good person. You know, like they say this a lot about autistic people, that we have this, and I think this is because that we like structure and rules give us a sense of structure. Even if it's abstract, it's something I visualize. Veering off, but because something else is poking out in my mind about how helpful AA was for me as an autistic person, and I didn't know it, but I loved the repetition. Regardless of what was said in the meetings, the fact that it was read over and over and over and over was soothing for me, and it brought me some level of comfort. And I loved going every Friday, like, I'm just making this up, but like, for example, like at 8 p.m. every Friday, sitting in the same chair, hearing the same 5 people say basically the same 5 things for indefinitely. There was comfort there. And there was, and there was, there was great comfort, and it was very healthy for me. Like, I didn't drive for a long time there, and so I walked to the meetings that I went to, and that brought this routine in my life of health, walking or bike riding, and that introduced that into my regimen, and like that was bringing structure into my life in a way that I didn't have otherwise, because I had a really hard time holding down jobs for lots of different reasons. So there was this kind of chaos aspect of my life there, but like AA gave the stability outside of the content itself. And that was the problem for me. It's like, I did start to heal in some ways when I went to the meetings, and I couldn't figure out what it was out of all the stuff that I was doing that was helping me. And in retrospect, I do think that it was those like small changes in behavior that over time stacked up, and it was the routine that it gave my life in like a literal, tangible, physical way that I loved, and that was healing me. Every couple of years, I started getting really into the literature, and as like any good autistic person, I would, I don't know, this is totally I apologize, it's a stereotype, but I do love researching things, and understanding things as best as I can, because it brings me joy. I like to collect information, and I would read the big book a lot, as we do, and go to book studies, and I kept running into these problematic things. Like, for example, the chapter "We Agnostics" is not very friendly to agnostic people after all. It is basically saying, change your mind if that's how you feel.
Yes.
and the the misogyny and to the wives, and like over time, like this book that felt like it was so sacred just started becoming something that had like every other page was like this glaring problem that when I would go to my friends and sponsor about this, they would just say that take what you want and leave the rest, Kylee. And I tried that, but then it just got to this point where, like, why can't we just have a book where the whole thing makes sense, and we don't have to like we don't have to like pretend that these paragraphs aren't here because they're so awful, and like or scratch out. I used to have so many things highlighted, and then it got to where I was just like having to like only one sentence out of like a freaking chapter was worth a shit, and that just really bummed me out. Like I hated it in there, but I didn't know what else to do. So like like I said, I'm so glad I finally found harm reduction, because harm reduction itself, it was confusing at first, because I kept asking everybody over there, like, so what do you guys do though? Like, what's the program? And they were like, there is no program. And I could not wrap my mind around that. It was like, what do you mean I pick it out? Like, I can't trust myself to know. Like, that was, mind blowing to to be able to be told that like what I wanted, like the way that we help people in the organization that I go to in outreach, like if someone is interested in recovery, it's like participant led. I'm not going to, as a peer, I would never, especially unsolicited, try to push recovery onto anybody, especially what type of recovery. Like we have to ask them, like, what do you want? Like, what are your goals? And that could be anything. It doesn't have to, any change in behavior is recovery. And like that's the thing, like recovery itself, like this whole thing about abstinence and recovery is like gotten so out of control, in my opinion. It's like it's the whole point of what we're all doing. I think we need to all just kind of like take a step back and remember what it is that specifically puts any of us into a position to need recovery in the first place. And that's usually because there's some instability happening in one or more of these like specific fields of our lives, which can be like social, financial, health. There's probably a few more, but like those off the top of my head, for example, are some pretty big ones. And if you're struggling in these areas, you need to make some changes. You can work to make changes to improve those. It's not one way to do that. There doesn't have to be one way or one path to stabilizing, restabilizing those places in your life, and that can look like whatever. That stability can look like what you want it to look like, and that's beautiful. And why does it have to matter so much how someone got there, as long as they get there, right? Like, that's recovery. Recovery is not like how many days I count not consuming this thing. Like, I mean, that could help someone reach a goal. That could be part of it, but that's not the point itself. For me, like, I wanted to have a life that wasn't chaotic, that had some routine and some stability. I realized that I didn't need to go on tour anymore as a musician, because that traipsing all over the country in a smelly van with a bunch of guys was not very good for my mental health as an autistic person, and that was a big piece to my puzzle that I needed, that had nothing to do with substance use or nothing to do with, I mean, it could have, insofar it was like, putting me into positions where I might have felt I needed to self-medicate because of the stress of doing that. But like, when I took those behaviors away, I stopped needing to self-medicate. So that was very healing, finding out I was autistic. Like, and I think I also might have just aged out of some of those behaviors too. I grew up. I feel like I'm just rambling. Thank you so much for giving me the space to talk and chat about this stuff.
I feel like that was the perfect ending to a really, really good conversation. And you wrapped it up so completely with a bow. And like, about what recovery, if we're really talking about recovery, then what does that actually mean? Is it continuous sobriety days in a row? Or is it have to do with the quality of your life? And so many more things, and you just said it so eloquently, and I really just appreciate that as the final piece here, like the heart of it, like what really matters. So thank you for like reeling it all in a very, very beautiful and heartfelt way.
Oh, thank you. I hope that made some sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, it's just cool to talk to you, because I've been following you for so long. I feel like I know you already, so.
I feel like I know you in a lot of ways too, because when I see you in the comments, I make sure to read it, because I always appreciate what you have to say. So I kind of have also had that, feeling and stuff. That's why I was like, DM'd you. I'm like, do you want to come on and talk? I want to hear more of your story.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. Did you catch the self-flagellation, that I feel like this is so immature, but like the that my phone, I was laughing at myself because there was this autocorrect where it changed it to self-flatulence in like something I posted.
Yes, yeah. Yes,
And I was
totally.
like, it was unbelievable to me that none of the steppers like came after me with that because of that. And I'm like, well, most people probably just didn't read that much because I type a lot. I'm very hyperverbal, and I can just get going and I don't even know. It's like 3 seconds and I'm like 7 paragraphs deep and I don't realize it. But I mean, I used to try to like mask that, but I just don't give a fuck anymore. I'm proud to be who I am, and if you don't want to read it all, then don't, I guess.
Yeah. Yep. I'm the same way. And I'm like, if you don't like it, this is my page. I'm not on yours. So get out of my house if you don't like my house. Like, just you can go. It's fine.
Own
I'm
it.
me.
Yeah.
It's okay. I don't need to be different so that you're comfortable. That got me to rehab in the first place. I'm gonna be myself.
Yes.
And if you don't like it, you can go away. And that's where it's at these days. So I want to, like, anybody who is listening along, especially people who are watching along, I would so curious to hear what came up for you in this. What was your biggest takeaway? What did you relate to? What are you thinking right now? You know, I love the conversation in the comments. You've heard like some of what I think, some of what Kylee thinks, and I can't wait to hear what you think in the comment below. So feel free to join that conversation down there. And again, Kylee, it was so great to have you on today and to hear more of your story. And you're definitely, if you feel inspired to at any point in the future, I would love to have you back on. I really love your intellect, your heart, and how you express yourself. And you're so thoughtful, and it's just a delight for me. So I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. I might do that because there's probably going to be 10 things that I think of like as soon as I get off here that, oh, damn it, I wish I would have mentioned this one thing because, you know, I mean, like I said, I just don't have a whole lot of in real time way to like talk about this stuff specifically with 12-step. Me and my husband talk about it sometimes, but we try not to let it like you know, it definitely isn't like my life anymore. I don't go to meetings and stuff, but I still I'm deprogramming. It's a process. I hope I don't have to do it for the rest of my life, but I was so young when I went in that it was just, it impacted my life in a very big way. And we heal and we grieve at different rates, and I don't feel bad for it taking this long, but yeah, anyway, I digress. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed hanging out with you today.
Same. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Okay.